Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever or wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Edwards, and this is the Channel's Own podcast. So today, I'm really pleased to be joined by Jonny Keighley, Chief Revenue Officer at SaleCycle. Jonny's journey is a really interesting one because after a long, successful career at industry giants like EMC and Vodafone and Salesforce, this is his first time carrying the CRO title, having previously held senior sales leadership roles, where I would say the focus is more narrowly on revenue, delivery teams and targets. He's now operating at that broader CRO level, aligning sales, marketing, customer success, systems, and strategy. Quite a job. And doing it in a fast-moving, dynamic market that is constantly evolving and adapting, and in terms of how to help people shop and buy online. So today, we're going to explore what surprised him about stepping into the CRO role, what's genuinely different from his previous leadership positions, how he thinks about modern sales technology and tooling, and what he now looks for in salespeople as the profession continues to evolve. So, Jonathan, Jonny, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Mark. And it's really good to see you after so many years. You and I met, I dare to think, almost 2 decades ago. So yeah, it's great to see you again.
And when you say 2 decades, it's not far off a quarter of a century. Really,
It's not.
is the
It's not.
is the way
It's
to
not.
look at it. But there we are. Time is flying. That's for sure. So yeah, I have very very happy memories from back then. Thanks ever so much for joining us here.
Pleasure.
Sales cycle. I know a bit about it. I've done my research, but my guess is many of our viewers or listeners perhaps don't know the business. Can you just give us a brief overview about the business itself? Who are you? What do you do? And what value do you deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. So SaleCycle have been around for about 15 years. We're the conversion rate optimization specialist. So what does that actually mean? We help e-commerce brands maximize profitability of every single sale that they make, every single purchase that a consumer makes. And we do that by turning browser intent into actual revenue. We help create personalized journeys, both on site and also off site, meaning that when someone, usually an unknown visitor, approaches and goes onto a website, we understand that person, we know what they're looking for, we help tailor their in real time their experience on the website, and then drive their activity and their engagement and their personalization to ensure that they convert on site. And if they don't, for whatever reason, convert on site, then we have off-site activations, and we can continue that personalized journey off-site with off-site activations like SMS, WhatsApp, RCS, email, etc., to bring that journey back on site and complete that purchase. So really, we actually say maximize profitability of every single purchase by creating a personalized, tailorized journey for every single consumer, whether you're known or unknown.
And from the consumer's perspective, because there have been occasions, I think probably everybody has, where you might have put stuff into a shopping basket, got distracted, gone elsewhere. So there have been occasions when I've been reminded that I've left something online. Do I want to go ahead? So there's a whole bunch of positives. Very interesting area. And my guess is constantly evolving. And you're
Massively so.
probably competing against, as are your customers, competing against, as I said, a kind of continuous evolution. Everybody's looking for a little bit more of a competitive advantage. So yes, I'm sure there's a lot of work there for you and the team. So
Keeps us busy.
so look, in terms of if that's sales cycle, but this is the first time formally in the kind of CRO role. Interested in what are the kind of biggest, or would you say the unexpected differences between the role you're now in and your previous senior sales leadership positions? What's the difference?
Yes. Well, Mark, for me, it's a role I feel I should have always done because I absolutely love the role. It's wonderful to be in control, have a tangible effect on the entire revenue engine. And I love my sales career. But this was a real stretch for me. And for those who want to watch probably my own failed attempt at not a podcast, but a small video journey of, I
I've
was
seen
going to,
them.
and my intent was to create 20. I think I got about
Right.
5 in and then realized my day job was taking over quite quickly. But no, for me, I suppose there's been 3 key learnings as I've moved from a sales leader into a CRO. And that was from going kind of, number one was pipeline obsessed into revenue obsessed. So as a sales leader, it was all about pipeline cover, pipeline metrics, the hygiene and closing rates. It's changed massively now. That the interest stopped when that deal was closed. We
Right.
accelerated, and then that was it. Now my obsession is kind of what exactly was sold. how does that onboard? How easy is it to onboard? How does that transition into my customer success team? Because as a revenue officer, chief revenue officer, I own our partnerships, the marketing, the sales team, and the customer experience team. And that means the whole revenue engine. So yes, it's not just what's sold, it's how it onboards. Importantly, when it bills. Again, as a salesperson, you sign a contract, great, off to the races we go. But actually, until that end customer, especially in a small organization, pays the invoice, it's not real revenue. It's just monopoly money. So, we can close stuff all day long in our CRM, but if it doesn't translate into the revenue that we A, predicted, and B, have contracted for, then we're just kidding ourselves. And, we can keep closing bigger and bigger sales numbers, but it doesn't translate into actual revenue.
Yeah,
we're kidding ourselves. So for me, it's that obsession over not just what's sold, but how it onboards and how it turns into actual revenue we bill and get paid properly. I think the second thing was around from targets to, I would say, unit economics. So not just the salesperson's target. This is what you need to do month in, month out, quarter in, yearly, etc. But other things like net retention rate. I'd never really paid any attention to net retention rate, meaning how do we ensure that our customers that we've got today are billing X, and how do we make sure in 12 months' time they're billing exactly the same? Because the obsession isn't just in terms of growing the business, in terms of net new sales, it's ensuring we mitigate and stop churn. Because any organization, if you churn customers, you can sell all day long. But if you churn more than you sell, you don't grow, you shrink. So for me, it's about making sure we don't just look at the economics of a sales team, it's the whole revenue engine. And as I say, looking and making sure that our customers continue to spend what they spent yesterday, because that's how we ensure that every pound, every dollar we sell tops up the bucket rather than just replacing what was already churning.
And can I ask, it's a SaaS model. Is it a monthly recurring revenues? And can the customer just walk away? So if it's not working or they don't, can they?
No.
Right.
No, not under my watch, Mark.
Right. Okay.
No, but no. What we have usual 12, 24-month contracts. Yeah. It is monthly billing, whether that's a fixed fee or whether it's performance based, which is a very traditional thing within the e-commerce market. But that is unpredictable both for us and for our customers. So we try and move towards the fixed fee. But yeah, it's monthly and usually 12 or 24-month contracts. But yeah, for me, that obsession turned from just sales targets to that other economic factors that I had to be focused on. And then obviously for me, the final thing was around, it wasn't just booking the quarter. As a sales leader, you are obsessed by the quarter, the start of the quarter, running the quarter, finishing the quarter. And then once Q1's done, it's, Q1's dead, long live Q2, and Q1's forgotten. But for me, living quarter by quarter isn't the way you build a predictable and structured and stable revenue engine. You've got to look over the next 12 months. You've got to look at the kind of revenue that you're bringing in as well. If you bring in revenue, which is quick wins, but not scalable, over, serviceable from the CSM team, it's just not scalable. So for me, you're looking just beyond that quarter on quarter to actually 12 months, 24-month revenues. And is it something that can continue to scale and be repeated?
This episode of the Channel Zone podcast is brought to you by In Connection, the trusted events agency to some of the biggest names in IT. In Connection knows that in today's fast-paced world, it's not just about delivering a return on your events investment. It's about delivering unforgettable experiences. Because some events fade within hours, while others become memories that are talked about for years. In Connection, the go-to event agency for the IT channel, creating memories that matter. That's part and parcel of the CRO responsibility. What are the different functions then?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. And becoming a CRO, I've joined a few communities in terms of, people talking about what functions within an organization should sit under the CRO and what shouldn't. Right. There's some people who argue that marketing shouldn't sit under the CRO. There's some CROs who, in all honesty, are sales leaders, but just with a CRO title. For me, if you're going to be a chief revenue officer, you have to own the revenue end to end. And as I say, that's why I run the partnership team. So our indirect route to market, so we can either go direct or indirect for our partners. The marketing team, so growth marketing, content, website, all that generates leads and drives people into the sales funnel. Then I run the new business team and the account growth team, and then the entire customer success team. So there's 50 people in the entire revenue organization, and it's a great team. And we've recently grown through acquisition. But yeah, it keeps me busy, keeps me smiling, but definitely keeps me out of trouble.
A lot of moving parts there. But interesting, as I said before we started, let's say the audience won't be privy to it, but we had a conversation about Formula One and the
We did.
pits kind of
Yeah.
environment. And I
Yeah.
said, even just the way you're describing it there, there's a lot of moving parts, lots of different functions. And the goal would be, I would say, you said, if you can get them, if you can orchestrate it so that that functions
Yeah.
well, like a Swiss watch, or might I say, like a
Yeah.
Formula One car in many respects,
Yeah.
then everyone's a winner. But
Agreed. Agreed.
that's not
But
a, that's that can't be an easy task,
it,
Johnny.
it's not an easy task, and for me, what adds a brilliant complexity, and I do mean brilliant, is because we are between the Gateshead office, Newcastle Gateshead, but also in Paris as well. So we're a global company. We provide services to companies all over the world, but our key two offices are in obviously the Northeast and Paris. And so for me, when you're running a single revenue team, but across different cultures, different
Right.
time zones, different offices, for me, that for me brings its own exciting opportunities, but also you have to be so purposeful in what you do, how you communicate, when you communicate, to make sure we all move as one as much as possible. But yeah, for me, the role, you're an architect. You're making sure that the functions are all
Yeah.
understanding that when one does something, it can impact either positively or negatively another one, and making sure there's harmony between the harmony between the functions, and
Yes.
ensuring that, as I say, I'll keep on saying it because it's one of our key OKRs for this year, objective key results, and it was move as one. How do we make sure this business, whether you're in sales, marketing, tech, product, legal, finance, we're all moving as one? So yeah, it's been a great journey over the past 14 months. Great journey.
I'm impressed with your enthusiasm and love for it, and that's really thrilling to hear. Seriously, after, as you said, best part of 2 decades in the industry. So as a slight pivot there, if we go back
Hmm.
20 years, when you first entered into the world of B2B kind of corporate sales back when we first met, which would have been your time. I can't remember if it was NTL Telus Business or if it was Virgin Media by
It
that
was just
time.
on that shift. I think they'd just
Right,
been
right.
bought out by
Telecoms
Virgin.
2.0. It would have been that era, if you remember.
Yeah.
But if you think about the technology stack, as a salesman at that time, you would have had a mobile phone, you would have had a laptop, you would have had email. I'm not even sure. LinkedIn was probably maybe not just about starting up at that time. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn Sales Navigator wasn't there
Nope.
at all. And CRM, I don't think you had one. You had the legendary Campaign Navigator, if you may remember,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
was a
Remember that?
Word document,
Yeah.
which a very complicated Word document. But compare that to where you are now.
Mm.
What is, and again, your oversight in the CRO role,
Hmm.
you're looking not only at sales technologies and solutions, but you're probably also the Marcoms or the Martech stack as well. What are the tools, the must-haves as you see it?
I think for me, the backbone of our revenue organization is our CRM. Absolutely, and I'll keep names out of this to make it easier. But yeah, so it's the CRM as the backbone, because it's not just showing us what we're going to close in terms of the sales function, but then that transition into the onboarding of the CSM function, creating the tasks, making sure that when we're onboarding customers, there's no delays. Because as much as you want a sales forecast to be rapid and to close quickly, you want your onboarding forecast to do the same, because as soon as we're onboarded, we can start billing and getting revenue. So yeah, CRM is the backbone of our
Right,
organization. Definitely, it's probably our most engaged with the where we hold all the information about our customers, what they're billing, how long they've been with us, all the background. It really is
right.
kind of the historical book of sales cycles, customers and prospects. But then I think from my perspective, it has changed massively, and I think we've got to be very careful at analysis paralysis. And what I mean by that is there's so much data in so many different technologies. You could spend all of your time researching and none of your time speaking to an actual customer or prospect. And I think
Mm,
that's,
mm, mm.
and I'll focus mainly on the sales business, because as much as being a CRO, that is 20 years of sales, it's changed massively. And I think simplification is key in making sure that you understand exactly what tools you're using for what outcome, and don't swamp the salespeople with too many tools. Otherwise, as I said, analysis paralysis will drop in. But also, I think if you're just consuming the data from all these tools, it takes away what I think is the most critical point and critical skill of any salesperson. It's curiosity. If you're just consuming the data, you're not asking yourself the question. You're not asking the customer the question of something that maybe LinkedIn Navigator could tell you. Sometimes I think you've just got to be careful about the technology replacing some of the core competencies that makes a great salesperson.
Yes.
So the CRM is definitely one. I think you've just got to ask yourself, what do I need to know as a salesperson? I need to know who I'm going to target. So the company and the persona. The company, Cognizant. Sorry, do you want me to say brand names or not?
Yes, you need to explain to me what it does. What is so Cognizant? What is that? Is that information? That's kind of business info.
It is. It is probably. I don't know if you remember LexisNexis back in the day.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there you go. It's the modern form of LexisNexis, where it's a great, I suppose, compilation of all the companies. Their objectives, who's in the business, what their revenue is, how their growth rates, etc. So
all the salespeople have access to that. Yeah.
So they do. So it's a great way of taking. Of all especially in prospecting, especially in the new business team, where I think tools are the most critical. It's an ability for them to go, right, of this massive white space, where do I focus? And it's about them building their ICP in there. Okay, so I want to build a list of customers in this geography that are this size revenue, that are this size traffic on their website, have this kind of AOV in terms of the products that they're selling. And it helps take that massive white space down. Okay, great. Now I've got my target account list through the likes of Cognizant. Okay, so that's my who company, who person. Then that's where LinkedIn comes in, LinkedIn Navigator. So now you can start thinking, great, okay, now I know the company I'm going to approach, who are the most pertinent people I need to approach, and how can I start massaging the relationship between us so I get on their radar and we can connect and we can discuss and we can arrange that meeting. And there's, the clever people in sales will have figured out how to break the LinkedIn algorithm, or should I say not break it, but manipulate it to their best impact.
LinkedIn or LinkedIn Navigator? Do you mean
LinkedIn Navigator? LinkedIn Navigator.
Right.
So the whole process of, you don't just connect with someone. You find your ideal profile. You find out who Mark Edwards is. I want to approach Mark Edwards. I want him to accept a meeting with me. So I'd go on your profile and I'd start engaging with some of your content. I'd like it. I might comment on it. And then the algorithm within LinkedIn Navigator is 14 days, there's a window where Mark Edwards, because I've been commenting on your posts and I've liked it, even though that we're not connected, it will surface my content to you. So suddenly you're like, oh, that Jonny, he commented on my post. Right. And then I can see some of his posts. Then, the LinkedIn request comes in, you connect, you start talking about topics that aren't necessarily selling, you build a relationship, and guess what? That's it. So for me, the smart person in sales massages that algorithm.
Is that only if you're on a LinkedIn Navigator subscription, or is it even for LinkedIn users? So
even for LinkedIn users. Yeah,
right. That's interesting to know, though. So that you do, even if you just commented, you may not be connected, you may not even follow them, but if you have engaged in their timeline on one of their posts, the likelihood is that if you post within that 14-day window, there's a strong possibility that you might appear in that window, right?
Exactly
okay.
That. So yeah,
that's fantastic. Yes. That's probably $1 million worth of consulting advice to some of the people that'll be watching and listening here. So that's good. I wasn't aware of that.
So for me, sales is a community, and revenue, and anyone who is customer facing is a community of people. And I think we should all be sharing more the goodness of what we can do to make our lives a bit easier. We live and die by the sword, so let's make it an enjoyable experience at least.
So you've got CRM.
Yeah.
What was the business in? Yeah, and say LinkedIn Navigator.
LinkedIn Navigator.
Right.
So that's kind of getting you closer to what you want to do. Then, there's a lot of technology out there in terms of creating sequences now, where you can create sequences in terms of, I want to send this email on this date, and then following up a week later with this email, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of ways of automating. But again, I think for me, everything in
moderation.
Moderation. Thank you very much. Everything in moderation. You automate everything, you become lazy. You automate everything, you lose touch with actually what you're doing. So automate some things, automate some sequences. But again, never forget, you can't automate a phone call. And I think that's one of the key skills that the sales community has probably started to lose over the past, decade or so, is just pick up the phone and have your conversation. And I personally get cold called a lot on LinkedIn, on email, and it's usually just swipe it because I'm not interested. If my
Correct.
mobile phone rings, because it rings genuinely so rarely now, because people are either WhatsApping or not, because
Yes.
I'm not very popular, not that I am popular at all, but not many people
It's
ring
job
me.
offers, probably,
It's
John.
it's
John,
it's it's
probably.
it's well, it's people bothering me to come on a podcast, Mark. I'm joking. But we for me, when the phone rings, I'll answer it because I want to, I'm interested to see who's spoken to me. And sometimes,
Yes.
mobile phone numbers are actually so hard to get hold of. That person's gone to a lot of effort to try and get hold of my number. So reward them with a
Yes, yes,
conversation.
yes, yes, yeah. I think I think the skill has probably gone, and I said, and the just the general assumption that will be, so the salesperson doesn't want to make the call because they've already assumed nobody's going to answer it anyway. Which
Yeah.
kind of any other tools you want to say, or can I pivot onto the next
Yeah,
line
no,
of
no, no. Yeah,
questioning
well,
here?
I suppose the final one I'd say, Mark, would just be, AI. Everyone's talking about it. Of course they are. It's the same as whatever I've said, though. It's a brilliant tool to help you gather insight, to polish your value proposition, to hone your understanding of something. But don't rely too heavily on it. For me, it's a key tool, and we've built an internal AI engine within SaleCycle, built on our own database, which is really powerful. But again, you use it just to polish and tweak. Don't
Yeah,
use it as your core competency. Otherwise, you'll
yeah,
lose some of those key skills.
yeah. And one I will ask about on an enablement side. Is it Gong or a variant of that, but kind of recording meetings and then using those for training purposes? Is
Yeah,
that again a
absolutely.
tool that you use?
Yeah, yeah. So we record. We have got a couple of options. We either use Google Gemini to record the notes, but in terms of recording the actual visuals of it, yeah, we can use a tool called Praise. And the power of that is, yeah, it's not just in terms of watching back and seeing how you perform and where you change things. It's the insights from the conversation. But then we've got an API into that builds out our AI engine as well. So we record all of our customer meetings into the AI engine. And for me, as a leader of 51 people, if we're doing, multiple customer meetings a day, how do I make sure, without micromanaging, but how do I understand who we're meeting? What's this customer sentiment? How are we positioning our capability? Where are there risks in churn, etc.? What the praise video recording being pumped into our AI engine then gives me a daily summary of these are the customer meetings. This is what we discussed. This is the sentiment. This is the churn risk, and it's just for me a great way of understanding the health of my business.
You mentioned that maybe phone calls not being so prevalent nowadays as a means of communication. Some of that may be to do with just how busy we are today, but also I want to get your thoughts on how things have changed since March 2020. March 2020, you may remember, we're going to flatten the curve. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Do you remember
Yeah, I remember that very
that?
well. I remember
And
that very well.
and that extraordinary year, and I would say definitely a transition period. But
Mm.
how do you think sales changed from that point? What are the key differences?
I think if we start in terms of the positive, I think in a post-COVID world, I do believe that sales has changed in the fact that I think during COVID a lot changed in the world in terms of people becoming more virtual. So I think the salesperson has now got an ability to sit far more meetings in every
Mm,
single day because the
mm,
the virtual kind of the meeting has become the norm.
yeah.
So I think the efficiency and productivity has massively increased in their ability to meet more people, sit in more meetings. But the converse of that is absolutely missing out on that personal touch.
Yeah.
I remember my sales career, I used to spend 90% of my time driving just on roads
Yeah.
constantly. And for me, whilst we can become more efficient through virtual meetings, post-COVID world, like I say to my team, get out and meet customers. Go
Yeah.
and shake their hand, have a conversation with them. And it was one of my sales leaders, a previous company, who said to me, the most important meeting you'll have, the most important discussion you'll have when you go and meet a customer isn't when you're in the boardroom. It's when you're walking from the car park to the boardroom. It's when you're walking from the boardroom to the coffee machine to go and get a coffee together. They're the moments of brilliance where sometimes you'll get that little bit of information, that little side comment that can be so powerful that they might not want to say in front of the rest of the people in the
Mm,
meeting, or
mm,
they might just, because you've built trust, want to give you a little bit of information. It's that preamble. You don't get that at the end of a virtual meeting anymore. You open, you log in, your camera goes on, right, this is the agenda, and off you go. You miss that human connection. You miss the small talk, which is so powerful. And we love a bit of small talk, but it's hugely powerful. So for me, yes, it's made people more efficient. They can meet more people, absolutely. But do not forget to go jump in the car, jump on a plane, jump on a train, just go meet people. It's so important.
I think that's the most consistent message that I've been hearing from sales leaders since 2025. I think they'd work from home. I think it became a challenge, even recruiting, didn't it? I mean, people wanted a home contract, they wanted hybrid working, and I think maybe the tide went a little bit too far that way. But companies, it seemed to me last year, they were shaking things up. There was RTO, return to office, in some organisations, wanting people back in. But we don't really there's not much point in having the salespeople sitting in the office, and there are benefits. But if you had a choice, you'd probably say, I'd rather you be face to face with the customer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for me, in the CRO role, when I first joined SaleCycle, we made some changes relatively quickly in terms of our go-to-market and the structure of the business to make sure that we, as I say, moved as one and moved the SaleCycle ship forward. But one of them was bringing people back into the office because there had been a move to hybrid working. And my genuine belief, after working for so long, in a remote environment, is there's so much benefit to be in the office. Just like I talked about in terms of those meetings, it's the same internally as well. It's the same conversations you have, the quick questions you've got to someone next to you, rather than thinking, right, I've got a question, I'll IM this person on Slack or wherever it might be. Just having a quick side conversation with your team. So I mandated in the revenue team that you're 3 days in the office. So we mandated a Tuesday and a Thursday, and then the third day can be any other day depending on you.
Okay.
And there was resistance at the start, absolutely, because it's a change, and change is always sometimes a bit uncomfortable. But the important thing for me is explain the why. Why was I making this change? What would it do for the team? What would it do for the business? And we're 12 months on, and it's become a habit, and it's become a really good habit. And the amount of people now that I'm actually interviewing to join SaleCycle, when I mention it's 3 days in office, they actually welcome it because they're a little bit tired of working at home. They sometimes get a bit lonely. And I think there's just so much value, not just within the team, the revenue team, of being in the office, but having the finance team right there, having the tech team right there. Yes, of course, the tools that you can use like Slack, etc., are great, but there's nothing better than just kind of grab you for 5 minutes and just having a quick conversation. It's for me, it's a big thing. It's a big thing.
Yes. Physical proximity, whether it be to the customer or to the management team. As I said, I think it can make it will make your career. And as a consequence, actually working remote too much of the time, not being in the office and not being around people, I would say it's detrimental to your long-term career prospects as well. But for many, you like myself, listen, I go back 20 years before you on that one. So, but I said blue suit, white shirt, red tie, BMW driving salesperson, driving maybe 35,000 miles a year at that point. Bearing in mind the circumference of the planet is only 20,000 miles. So there were times when I was going around the world twice, but I was only doing the M25, M1 and M6. Not seeing much of the world in that respect. But I think there's a cohort of younger salespeople who don't have that experience, and so perhaps even trying to sell them on the benefits of it might prove to be a challenge. But it's definitely we seem to be, as I said, very much in agreement on that, and that is exactly what I am hearing from the CROs, the sales directors, the sales managers, the sales leaders that I encounter. I can always ask them, your salespeople, are they out enough seeing customers? No, they're never out seeing enough customers. They always want them to do more.
The nirvana was when I was at a previous company working with a large defense company. We actually hired a porter cabin on site because to get on and off site was such a challenge with security passes, and every time we wanted to get there, it was around half an hour process to get on site. Went through MOD security clearance, hired a cabin on site. And it was just really powerful because then you're in the restaurant at the same lunchtime, and you're not just meeting them, you're literally on site permanently. So if you can work from a customer's premises, that is nirvana all day long.
So there's return to office, but I say there's RTC, return to customer as well. And again, Ed Kenny, who is an old colleague of mine at Computer Center back in the 1990s, he's retired now, but I think he might have been my first podcast guest back in
Right.
series one. But his whole thing was he spent most of his time on a customer site.
Mm.
That's what he always recommended. That was the way to work. So
Yeah,
no, super.
it's how you get to know the customer. It's how you
Mm.
understand kind of the culture of how they operate and how you then
Yes,
navigate them
yes,
as a
yes, yes,
salesperson. And
yes, yes.
sometimes a great salesperson is the glue within a
Yeah,
customer's own organization, is bringing different
absolutely.
functions together who actually
Yeah.
probably trying to achieve the same thing, just don't even realize it.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
and I'm sure you've used the term in some instances, customer intimacy. How you can't. I think it's very difficult to get intimate with a customer in a virtual meeting environment. If that's all you've ever done is deal with them, you could over a long period of time. But
yeah, it's
that intimacy, you can get a connection. You can get a connection very, very quickly sometimes with people in that
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
face-to-face
you
environment.
can
So
absolutely. And I remember when I was in the depths of sales, I've been doing it for a good few years, and my wife turned to me and went, "What do you just go out for lunches with people in sales? Is that your job?" And you know, there's a truth to that to a certain degree, but yeah, it's that human aspect. It's building relationships, and
mhm,
you don't build relationships with people buy from you because they like
mhm,
you. You build relationships because
mhm.
people trust you, and you know that
Yeah.
you're going to follow through on the
Yes.
promises, etc. But you know that
Yes.
trust is hard to build. Where
Yeah.
you know when you say to someone, you know, sign that contract, spend X millions with me over the next 5 years. If they don't trust you, they're not going to do it. And to build that
Yes.
trust, how do you build that trust without going and seeing them in person? I think it's almost
Yes.
impossible.
Yes. Part of that trust is say there needs to be credibility. You need to be credible. You need to be reliable, and there needs
Mm,
to be a level of intimacy, which I think is the kind of thing that you're more likely to, even in a line in a coffee shop, as you said, waiting to pick up a sandwich and something. The conversation you'll have there might
yeah,
might 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 be the keystone. Might
yeah,
be the key to it all. So
yeah, yeah.
super insights there, Johnny. Thanks for that. Coming towards the end, I've got a couple of questions here. Are you hiring at the moment? So, but one question here is: when hiring salespeople today, what is it? What do you look for? Is it a different type of salesperson than you might have looked for 5 years ago? And if so, in what way?
Interesting. So yes, we are hiring. Reason being, we've obviously acquired another organization.
Expanding?
Yeah, we're going to take that acquisition that's been successful in France and take it to other countries. So we are hiring salespeople at the minute. And in terms of what I look for, hasn't really changed because I think the key competencies of a good salesperson, like I said earlier, you know, one of the massive things is that curiosity. That has done me so well across my entire career. Is be curious about the customers that you're working with, be curious about the people that you're working with, the industry that you're working with. If you're curious, you'll
Mm,
want to know more. You'll be a hoover of some
mm,
kind of knowledge. And that for me is a powerful thing. But, you know, I always look at two things, aptitude and attitude when it comes to hiring people. And for me, you can train aptitude all day long. I can train someone to be a great salesperson. I can't train attitude. If you
mm,
don't have that self-starter, inquisitive, hungry, um, just just desire to succeed mentality, then it's going to be a challenge because sales is tough. It's designed to be tough because we get rewarded so well as salespeople. It's a
yes.
fantastic career, but
Mm,
it's the thing that taught me the quickest lesson about sales when I did my very, very first sales job, which was door knocking, selling telecoms to people's homes.
yes.
That was literally the more you put in, the more doors you knock, the more doors that will open, the more sales you'll get. And so for me, sales is a challenge. So you've got to have the right attitude. And as I say, skills, yes, depending on what level I'm hiring for. If I want a seasoned salesperson, I look for obviously the success, etc. But if it comes down to the raw thing of attitude versus aptitude, it's always going to be
Mm,
attitude I
mm,
hire on
mm,
because
mm.
I can train aptitude.
I love what you say about curiosity. I think you've mentioned that a couple of times in this call. But I was on a workshop many years ago with a guy called Jay Tyler from the US. But that was the one thing I took away from that, and I've quoted him 1,000 times since then. But his line was about curiosity and interest, as he called it. The
Mm,
moment a salesperson loses their curiosity and interest, it's game over.
yeah.
And I said that it was a powerful line, and maybe it was the occasion and the way that it was presented, but that has absolutely stuck with me. And there are many sales leaders that I've spoken to since then who will also reference curiosity as being a key component of it. So it's great to see it there with yourself also. So okay, the final question then on this one. We are sponsored by In Connection, the go-to-market events company, and in every episode that we've done now in series 3, I'm asking each of the guests to pick out their favorite or most memorable corporate hospitality type event. So be it a President's Club or a special event for customers or employees or partners, what's your most memorable event?
Yeah, and I've been to many other years, whether it's Monaco, San Francisco, but I'm going to say my favourite was the one we did last year at SaleCycle, which was at Slaley Hall, over near Hexham in the northeast. So the northeast isn't quite as glamorous as Monaco or San Francisco, but for me, why was it my favourite? It was my favourite because it was our all hands kickoff in May last year. We'd just come through a challenging restructure. We'd changed our go-to-market, we'd changed the teams, and the vibrancy, the togetherness, the connectivity of the people after, admittedly a challenging time was wonderful. The energy, the enthusiasm, the passion, the excitement about what the next chapter of SaleCycle was going to be was wonderful. It was a great 2 days. It was a wonderful location. But it was one of those kind of, I look back sometimes on the videos that we've got, and it pulls at the old heartstrings because you can just see in people's faces just this is it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it together, and it's going to be fun along the way. So that was my favorite, definitely.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds like, say, one of those memories that matters. So super. Well, look, thanks ever so much for your time. I think we're finishing on time, which is perfect. I'm sure you've got plenty of other things to be getting on with. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Thanks ever so much, Jonny. Really appreciated it, and look forward to speaking to you in the not too distant future. Until then, thanks ever so much for being with us.
Thank you, Mark. It's been wonderful. Great to see you again.